like I'm sure for a lot of people around the world, the ocean is a part of their life, right? For me, the ocean wasn't just a part of my life, it saved my life. Without the ocean, a lot of the times we wouldn't have been able to eat.
Welcome to another episode. Flow Talk.
Episode 201.
222.
222.
That's my favorite.
We are here with a legend.
I ain't too young to be a legend.
All right. Well, let's start off. Can you just introduce yourself and just say where you're from and what you do for work?
My name is Christopher Dennis. When I behave badly, people call me Chris.
I just heard the Coconut Man called you Chris.
Yes.
Not Christopher.
My daddy called me Chrissy. I'm from Balandra, Rampanalgas, Trinidad. And for work, I do everything. Landscaping, surfing.
Oh, everything.
Everything.
Tours,
everything, you name it.
Yeah, well, I'm so happy to be in your backyard. Like, this is unreal right now. I hear the waves crashing, the trees are blowing. Like, it's my first time on the east coast of Trinidad, so thank you for sharing your little paradise.
Well,
and
thank you for coming. First off, welcome. Welcome to Trinidad. It's your first time up this way. And welcome. Today, hopefully, we get a little bit of a viz so y'all can see the coast from the water. I grew up here as a kid, and I still live literally 2 minutes away from where I grew up.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And you had this place almost to yourself. Like when we went surfing yesterday, it was just us.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
For surfing, Trinidad is not well known. And we have some surfers here in the community. There's about 200 of us. However, you can always guarantee, there's always a guarantee that you're going to have uncrowded waves. I could surf every day by myself if I wanted to. But see, that's not what it is about, right? It's about sharing.
Right.
And it's the same thing with freediving and spearfishing.
Right. And before we get into freediving, like, how did you get into surfing? Because I noticed here it's not...
There's no one?
There's no one. So how did you, find out about surfing and realize it was your passion?
So later, when I show you where I grew up on like this little berm, like a little mountain that kind of overlooks the ocean. And when I was 12 years old, I saw my first surfers. Generally, a lot of the surfers are from the city, and some of them would have like beach houses and stuff out this way. So when they come to the beach houses, they would surf in my backyard. So I remember coming back from school and walking into the yard and looking. When you're walking to the yard, you could see the ocean, and looking out to the ocean, because I'm always, back then I started spearfishing since I was 6 years old. So when I'm coming back from school, I'm always looking to see how the sea is. This was before any telephone, this was before any internet, this was hell, before any electricity. So the first thing you're seeing is, I am checking, is the ocean. Is it flat? Is it calm today? And I remember looking and seeing something like people sitting out, like literally sitting in the ocean, but outside where there are waves. And I remember like going closer to have a look. Like, I'm on top of this little mountain, and I walk closer to the edge to really have a look. And as soon as I got closer, I just saw like a huge swell rise up, and I saw somebody kind of just like literally look like they were like gliding, like they were like floating, going along the wave face. And it was my first time, 12 years old, seeing surfing. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was like losing it. I was like, what are they doing out there? Two of them. What are they doing out there without a spear gun? That was my first thought. Because growing up, you associate the ocean for food, right? And the ocean has sharks. Growing up, that's what we know. There's sharks out there, and you don't want to go out there without a little bit of a weapon, right? And to see these guys just gliding along a wave, that's all they're doing, without a mask, without a spear gun. Like, why? And I remember being so transfixed. I was still in my school uniform, and I was just standing there just looking at them, like, until my mother was calling me like, hey, change your clothes. And I was 12 years old. That was the first time I saw surfing. But growing up in these parts, it's like a super humble kind of place. Very rural, especially back then. I was born in 1978. So 1978 in Trinidad, especially rural Trinidad. Literally, those whole eras, 78 to almost late 80s, you would have one car pass every 2 days or something. One car, We grew up very humble, very, very, very humble. So, like, having a car isn't something that a lot of us, knew about. So we walked to go everywhere. And living off the land and the ocean is what we did.
So the ocean was always a part of your life, and that how you started freediving was, you said when you were younger, 6, started spearfishing.
Well, like, I'm sure for a lot of people around the world, the ocean is a part of their life, right? For me, the ocean wasn't just a part of my life, it saved my life. Without the ocean, a lot of the time we wouldn't have been able to eat. Living off the land, you would have like bananas or plantain or breadfruit, But we grew up catching fish or crabs. And the ocean, obviously, people would talk all these types of talks about like the ocean being a part of their life and stuff. But can you imagine that all you know of the ocean is that this was sustenance? The ocean provides food. And that's how I knew. That's all I knew growing up. Yes, sure, we would go have a swim every so often, but our agenda was always around getting food in the ocean and getting food before it gets dark. Mm-hmm. So you could go back and cook the fish or cook the pacro. You know what a pacro is?
No.
A pacro is this little, it's like about this size, and it sticks on the rock. And you would go with like a little knife or stone and dig them out.
It's like a snail?
It's like not like a slug.
Mario was talking about this morning.
Yeah.
He wanted to catch, and if you don't, you need to cook it right, otherwise it's...
Yeah, and it's in a shell, it's in a hardened shell, and you have to go on the low tide. That was one of my favorite, getting pacro, and we call it pacro. I am 46 years old now, and I don't even know if that's the correct name.
I like it.
We'll have to take a picture.
But we would dig out the inside and get the flesh. Like, it's just like a little bit, so you have to dig out like at least hundreds of this to get like a little bit of meat. And they replenish themselves quickly. But anyways, you learn all the nuances. You learn all the spots. Literally, you would learn, like on the whole coast, we learned everywhere every hole is, every crack is. Literally almost every morsel of sand, you knew it. Because knowing those things is going to determine if you're going to get food or not. So it's cool now because, and also interesting because now with the age of the internet, and I would dare say some privilege, people are catching fish and releasing them. All the spots are exposed and all of that, and there's more accessibility, just right wrong. And it's kind of like, it comes across to me sometimes, I have nothing against it, it's just like it comes across very privileged because literally we would catch a fish and that was sacred. You would catch a fish and take your time and eat it, Mm-hmm. Now just catching these creatures and just releasing them for a YouTube video or, I mean, look, to each his own, but also all those things were super new. I'm a bit of a dinosaur, I was here before the telephone,
You told us 2 days ago your first spear gun was made out of an umbrella.
Yeah. Yeah, and I could still make that stylus to this day, and people, I'm sure, would be thinking, what? We used to use the umbrella spokes. When you live in these areas, you barely have electricity, barely have running water. You've learned to get creative, So I made a crossbow, attach it to a piece of wood, use a kitchen fork, right? Bend it a particular way, use a nail, and it's a combination of things. and you would be shooting little snook in the river, and I would be shooting parrotfish and have to chase them down because you don't have a barb on the spear. It was like real primitive, but to this day there are places in the world just like that, you know. And ironically, and ironically, they are some of the best spear fishermen and freedivers in the world.
Yeah, it's
We've gotten real privilege. We have all these fancy long blade fins and all these
fancy fins and these guns.
But you know what? It's part of the evolution, right? We're more safe now. We're in a position where we could pass on the knowledge in a controlled environment, in a safe environment, and I guess that would probably lead me up to our NGO work.
Yes.
Now, you know. But freediving and spearfishing back then was just instinct.
Yeah, part of life.
Yeah.
So as a part of your life, when did you realize freediving was a thing, right? Because now you're an instructor, you do amazing work with the NGO and the kids, which I want to hear all about, but how was your journey starting to become an instructor? How did you find freediving, or how did freediving find you?
Well, yes, we'll separate two things. Spearfishing and freediving is obviously two completely different things. Ironically, I discovered freediving very late in my life. I discovered freediving only a couple of years ago. Again, spear fishermen, I'm sure this is all around the world too. Most spear fishermen just started spearfishing and they stayed spearfishing, and then they decided to do an educational program of some sort, a course or something. With the age of YouTube and stuff, a lot of information is there. So after spearfishing for so long, learning to use the internet. That's funny, right?
Yeah.
But I swear to you, that's how it was for us. But the thing is, we have great adaptation skills. Yeah. Because you would have had to know how to live off the land.
Yes.
How to live off of the ocean without all these fancy tools that we have now.
Right.
How to go out into the ocean without a GPS and come back home safely. Literally navigating through stars. The stars and moon is a real thing. All right. When the weather is white, meaning when you can't see land, how are you getting back without a GPS? Those are things that are a bit lost, not on some of us. So it's the same with when you get all the information. We had to learn, obviously, how to use the internet. And I don't like speaking like I'm super old. I am not even 46 years old, but I'm old enough to remember what it was like and what it is now. When things became accessible at school, you learned to use the internet. We were going to learn to use the internet in a bus that the government refurbished, and you would go into this bus and learn to use Windows 98 or something, you know. And so you have access. So you started Googling stuff on the freediving, and same thing with surfing. You remember what an encyclopedia was?
Yes.
I would scour through the school library looking at surf pictures about Duke Kahanamoku and about all these great legends and about the sport and where it was originated. And the information in encyclopedias back then obviously were older and limited as far as like the knowledge on the sport. Same thing I used to do with spearfishing. Encyclopedias like this thick. You know what I mean? You were forced to go through the whole book before you could find something on what you like.
Right. Not just instant.
Yeah. So, but my journey to freediving was just a special one. And I'll say that because I met a lot of special people along the way. And Virgil Price was one of them. And it was so random. Virgil is an American. What are the chances that some random American, and literally he is random, if you think about it in terms of life, like what are the chances like you meeting somebody all the way from Florida, and I'm like from a little dot in the Caribbean? I mean, these days the world is a village, literally. But one of my fishing friends called me one day and said he has someone he wants me to take out. Let's take him out and show him a good time. on the East Coast, show him a good spearfishing, what good spearfishing is about. Because on the East Coast here, we have a lot of fish and no sharks. I always knew about like the art of freediving, right? But every time I went into the ocean up until that point, it was mostly to fish. And with the information of, you know, learning how to kick properly and learning how to equalize and learning what to do with your head and all these techniques, they're all available online. So you'll get like a rough idea of like, all right, I had poor technique before because you're self-taught. And Virgil Price showed up on Balandra Beach with my good friend Saif, and by the time I got to know him, I knew instantly that this guy is more than what meets the eyes. And he introduced me fully into that whole life of freediving with a line and the art of just relaxing instead of hunting a grouper, you know. And I remember the first time I did my first 100 feet with him. He went down with me, and I couldn't stay calm enough, and I started like coming back up, and he just reminded me like what it was about with just his hand gestures, just doing this calm. And that was my first 100. The second dive I did, like I went past 100 feet by a mile. And the first time I did 100, and he taught me about like being like just stay calm. I remember this lesson. He went down with me again when I went past the 100, and that's what a lot of people associate. A lot of us freedivers associate freediving with the calmness, the stillness of mind, that happy place. With spearfishing, obviously, it's different, right? With spearfishing, you're all about. Sometimes your ego could trick you, so sometimes you're like, oh, I want this the biggest black grouper I could get, or oh, there's a huge kubera, you know, and I'm gonna get that. And the contrast between freediving and that relaxed state of mind was amazing. I could have tapped into it very easily because I was also a competitive surfer and competed at a fairly high level. So being calm around chaos was something that I learned at a very early age, even before competitive surfing, because as humble as we grew up and as peaceful in terms of like a lot of green and a lot of ocean, there was also stresses, there was also chaos around us. Chaos such as, how are we going to eat today, you know? So instinctively, you were taught under pressure how to be calm and everything will work out. That's a real important trait. That's the single most important trait for being a freediver, in my opinion. Because you could get taught everything else. You could learn to kick, correct head position, learn all the breath hold techniques, what works. So you can learn those things. Teaching someone the psychological part about being calm.
Yeah, and stay calm under pressure, literally and figuratively, and being comfortable, being uncomfortable. If that makes sense. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. Being comfortable in uncomfortable situations.
Yes, thank you. What I meant to say.
So I just want to give a little backstory for the listeners about Virgil, because he's actually the reason why we're here and the person that connected us, right? So Virgil is a freediving instructor from Florida, one of our very good friends who tragically passed away in May, and tomorrow's actually his birthday. It would have been 40. But as Chris was explaining, Virgil came to this place and just instantly fell in love, and he knew that Kiki actually used to live here, and her father was born here. And he said he loved this place so much. He said, you know, they've got an awesome thing going on down there. They've got a community that's growing just like ours. And I want you guys to come down there with me, and we're going to do a camp in Tobago. We've got some local people coming out. We're going to train people from level 1s to intermediate, master, and even instructors. And actually, even before that, we had known about you because Shivani had showed us the video, the Vans surfboard drive that you guys did.
Which was an amazing video.
Yeah, we'll link that in the comments.
Yes.
fair warning, you will cry happy tears
Yeah,
watching
it's an
it.
amazing video.
But yeah, so that's how we met. And we learned about your group. All right, we're having some technical difficulties. This Caribbean heat is too much for our camera equipment, but we're back now. So yeah, so Chris, you were explaining to us about Waves for Hope and some of the work that you've been doing.
Well, when we left off, I was talking about how important relationship was, and I was talking about my journey into freediving. Disclaimer, I'm not the best freediver in the world. Yes, I can sometimes have a good crack at it. But I'll take it back to surfing and how with surfing I spent this summer would be 30 or 31 years I've been surfing. And I've competed maybe over 20 years, way over 20 years with surfing. And I got to travel and see a bit of the world through surfing. And every time I would come back to Trinidad and come back to your small village, nobody cares where you've been. And it was extremely humbling. But I would came back to this part of the world with like almost like fresh eyes, new eyes. I would start seeing things super differently because when you travel, you get an education that no university could ever teach you. And I would come back into the communities here and I started really seeing things for what they were. And I don't mean that in a horrible way or anything, but
It's a new perspective.
just a perspective I never had before. And I think I was surrounded by poverty, not just physical poverty, but in many ways poverty of the mind as well. And when I showed up with my little surfboard in one of the village spots, like a minute away from here, there'd be kids swimming on the beach and they would be like, I want to get a ride, what's that? And I would take them and push them on my board. And then every time they see me, they would want to try. And you start building relationships, right? You start building trust, right? And before you know it, the side story to that is they're swimming, but like, maybe they're hungry, or maybe, things are not so good at home. And you start hearing all these stories. And I started inviting them to come up by my house because my backyard has a surf spot. And my house suddenly became like that place, the place where they could go escape whatever they were trying to escape. They would leave home. Sometimes their guardians or their parents don't even know where they are, but they were with us, with me surfing. And then with the stories, I started thinking to myself, like, you have to do something. That innate desire to want to help each other, once you get past the fluff and the ego, that's really who we are, in my opinion. And I learned those stuff from my mom. She was the one who would have Sunday school in her yard. She was the one who would donate her time to the school, to the little primary school, falling down little primary school, playing the guitar for the choir. She's the one, even though we were poor and didn't have much, she's the one who would take my secondhand clothes and give it to kids less fortunate. And I think I got those values instilled in me. And that's how it started with surfing. And before you know it, you were teaching kids how to read and teaching kids how to write and teaching them surfing. And I didn't know it at the time, but like that meant everything. That meant everything to them, as far as like you were teaching in a fun environment, not this restrictive kind of crazy school environment. That has its place, of course, in society, but sometimes you're working with really special youth, special kids, and a classroom ain't necessary where they would learn about life, And of course, I started with 5 or 6 boys, and before you know it, that turned to 10, and 10 turned to 15, and yeah, until it became so much. I would be asleep and kids would be outside waiting for me to get up on a Saturday morning. And it was a lot. It was a lot hearing about their hardships, or hearing about, their life and their stories and the time that they spent with us, me and my my mother would help out sometimes. They look forward to that the next few days. You know, it was mostly every Saturday when it evolved, and that wasn't necessarily a program. I just didn't know. I just didn't know that that in itself was a program, because you would be talking, and that was almost like therapy. That was almost like counseling. You would be feeding, and that whole thing is like providing a safe space. You'll be teaching, and that in itself was a holistic way of not just providing a safe space, but like being a human, you know. So that, of course, life would go on. I went on to have good success with surfing, some hard times and some really good times. And when I came back to Trinidad after my travels, the thing that I was really, really passionate about, my passion started going the opposite direction. I competed so much that to an extent I was over it. And it had nothing to do with winning or losing. It was just soulless. And every time I came back home, I could have won an event in Puerto Rico or finished high ranked in an event in California. And whenever I came back to Trinidad, that would have been a big deal in America. But when I came back to Trinidad, nobody knew, nobody cared. I would be walking down the street barefoot like a normal person. And again, it's not about the ego, it's more about what we place value on, what's considered valuable to us. Caring and sharing is of more value than winning some events. Looking out for each other is of paramount importance than having $400,000 in your bank account. Not that I have $400,000 in my bank account, but my passion started weaning off from competitive surfing. I mean, yes, I do have my moments still where I know if I put in a 1 month training, I could put in a couple heat wins, you know. But those moments are fleeting. My passion started towards youth work and really dedicating time towards really making my life less about me and more about connecting to the communities that I live in. And if that makes a difference in somebody else's life, so be it. There's so much I could say and talk about as far as like how it got there, but it was that same passion to helping youths with surfing that brought me to me and my wife co-founding an NGO called Waves for Hope, centered around mental health work for kids and youths and young adults. And it was that same passion for everything that I do. Now we have freediving included with a mental health curriculum, working with young adults and using freediving as a tool towards a better, healthier mental life, and by extension being able to make better decisions. And it's so funny, like again, our ego, we could get tricked by it. It's always about the biggest and the best and the deepest, but for programs like these, it's not about the deepest or the best. Freediving can teach you a lot about yourself. You can almost watch a freediver and tell a bit about their personality just by looking at the way they carry themselves in the water and out of the water. And being able to fuse freediving with a mental health curriculum, it has been an amazing last few weeks. We just wrapped up a 5-week freedive program, and it's not about all the fancy certificates. It's not about who did 63 feet. For us, that's not what it is about. Yes, you have parameters to operate in as far as safety, but the young adults we engage with, it's about learning something new about themselves. It's about a particular sport becoming something that makes them have healthy thoughts, that helps them have purpose and passion, that gives them that drive when they feel like they can't go on any longer because of the stresses of their lives and stuff. That's what it is about. And
to work together and
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's what it is about. And if a young adult wants to pursue that as a career, I am in a now very privileged position to be able to facilitate that, along with all the great people like yourselves that I've encountered along the way in this journey as far as life is concerned. I can't even say enough about freediving and the impact it has had on the communities. It's not just one community. Now we're teaching freediving all the way up to several community villages up the coast. And it's only one of me. I have great support from my wife. Our mentors in our programs are amazing young adults themselves, and they also help out. A lot of the times I see in my travels, people want to learn to freedive because it'll better their spearfishing, right? That's a lot of instances. Here, freediving is just freediving. Whether the water is clean, it's rough, they just want to go under. And to an extent, it's a little bit of escapism if you think about it, right? But the high that they get doing 30 feet is like the high you would get doing 200 feet. It's insane. And the community around it, healthy community that's around freediving here, and it's in a skeleton type of form still, huh? We're still more or less rural. We still don't have enough equipment, those types of things. But that will gradually come. I'm not even worried about it because people are having a good time. People are using it as a way of coping, and we have more programs coming up. It's called Freedive Therapy. That's what we call it.
Love it. I love it. I think yesterday when we were at the beach surfing and the moon was rising, it was beautiful. But I saw one of your kids sitting behind us, and I think he was meditating. He was sitting and breathing, and I was thinking that must have been some technique that you taught him.
Yes. So he came from our surf therapy program, and I know we have to go back, rewind a little bit. I won a bit of a scholarship to go study this therapy type of thing in South Africa, and I gained a lot of international recognition in this surf community, doing a board drive with Vans, who is my sponsor still, and that's because with surfing and the amount of youth that was coming, I started to run out of equipment. I was using all my own equipment. I started reaching out in our surf community here in Trinidad for second-hand board shorts and leashes and broken boards. Like, I'll put them back together and have boards. And then when that started running out, I reached out to a couple of my international friends, like, hey, because I know these guys have board sponsors and stuff. Hey, I know you have 10 boards in your room. You're gonna come to Trinidad with 2 board bags, please. And because surfboards are helping the community here, and that morphed into something I never imagined, which was Vans getting on board and all the other athletes getting on board, and that's how it started. And it's the same with freediving and coming back to Virgil Price. I am always looking at a way how you could help somebody else. And again, none of us are getting any financial reward out of this.
So it's like that's how Virgil was too. He was always trying to help people, whether it's stray animals or people.
No strings attached, not looking for anything in return.
No, just a genuine person who wanted to help and make the world a better place.
The first time he met me, I was feeding some dogs on Balandra Beach. And when he showed up, I was surrounded by about 6 stray dogs, giving them dog chow. And I think that was our bond there.
Yes,
and by the time we were sitting on the boat, going out to spearfish, I've always had this idea somehow, like, maybe I could teach youths how to spearfish, but it's a little dangerous as far as with the spear gun. It never crossed my mind that doing this thing without a spear gun It never crossed my mind that that was a possibility. And on the way out, me and Virgil were just having like the deepest conversation in a pirogue, 40C, both bashing like this, and we are having like the most in-depth conversation, and we only met half an hour ago. But see, that's the thing with that guy, he had a way of just reminding you like of what really matter, relationship. And you would meet him for the first time and you feel like you've known him for 20 years. And I told him of my dilemma. I said, I have this idea because I'm involved in using skateboarding, fusing it with therapy, mental health work, surfing, fusing it with say mental health work. How can I use this other sport that I love so much? And by the time we got to the first spot, we had a template. I had a template in my head, and Virgil was going to make all these connections. That was hella only last year, summer, August.
I know. Wow. It's only been a year, and like the things and the change that has happened and impact in only a matter of a year.
Fast forward to now, as far as Waves for Hope go, we've had 2 pilot programs of 12 youth. All right. We just ran our first 5-week program, full program, and we have in a couple months another program being set up. On top of that, obviously you've had people who were freediving, but now the community has grown so much in Trinidad, and I'm real fortunate to be one of the instructors, the few instructors we have here. And I never got into instructing because I wanted to make money. It was never about financial gain for me. At the beginning of this, I told you I do all sorts of things for making money. Now it's about growing the community, growing the therapy part of it using freediving for a safe space, and getting young adults to appreciate the ocean in a different way. And we are well on our way. I want to take this opportunity to, if you don't mind, to thank everybody who have supported Little Waves for Hope in America, from Live Freediving to Florida Freedivers, to all the amazing individuals in there who, through Virgil, believed and had the confidence in myself and my wife, just in general us, that we could make an impact with freediving. I know this program in this part of, well, in Trinidad, and this part of the Caribbean is kind of the first, but I wouldn't get so presumptuous. I'm just saying it's a first for us in the history of our country. I know that factually, to be able to use freediving as such a tool. And I wouldn't be surprised in the next few years if you see a young adult competing at a high level in freediving, if they want to compete, because we already have amazing young people doing amazing freediving. And think about this, a month before they learn to freedive, could barely swim. That's the other crazy thing about living on an island. Can you imagine not being able to... Living on islands like these, there's a lot of taboo as well. A lot of taboo about the ocean, and yeah.
Amazing.
Amazing to see your impact, and yeah, I'm excited to see a Trinidadian freediving team.
Yeah.
Hopefully one day.
Well, a team is one thing, but we've had a couple of Trinidadians who've done some amazing stuff already, even before me and before the kids program and stuff. People like yourself, right? Who've not too bad, right?
Yeah, inspire others, and that's what it's about, right?
Yeah.
Just to show them the possibilities of what they can do, and taking fear and self-doubt and turning that into confidence.
Right. Like, even those that aren't competing, like you said, the life skills that they're gaining from this. I think you explained to us, some of the people that have graduated your program go on to get good jobs with the Coast Guard or working with the oil rigs. And like you said, it's not so much about the depths and certifications. It's about the positive thoughts that you get from this, the empowerment that people see.
Yeah, you're exactly correct. And who knows what's next? For now, what's planned is we have a safe therapy program starting in 2 weeks. And after that, we go into our freedive program again. We do have sessions coming up because it's a lot of work. This is not all glamour. It's a lot of work to be able to execute all these programs. Also, like I said, you're teaching mental health. You know, that sometimes could get scary. You get to also understand yourself a lot as well. I'm a dreamer. I have another dream of being able to take the first ever freedive club here and take them to Tobago in the next few months, because we're busy trying to come up with the money to be able to do that. That's going to be important, not just in the freedive growth, but also in their mental growth as well. Some of them never been to Tobago, you know, so we're going to make an adventure out of it. And with the support of good friends over there as well, we'll pull it off.
So, question, Chris, if people listening want to support you, what's a good way to get in touch? We'll link the website in the comments, but if people want to donate or people want to come here and visit, book a trip with you, what's a good way to get in touch?
Easy. Go to Google Waves for Hope Trinidad. That's it. Yeah. And you'll get all the links there. As far as booking a trip to come here, yes, you could send us an email through Waves for Hope, but we have Surf Balandra as well. Yes, one of my jobs is doing tours, and again, that's another first, right? So I do tours, airport transfer, food, accommodation, local scouting, waterfall hikes, the full works, all packaged into a tour. And we can do it with spearfishing, we can do it with freediving, we can do it with surfing, or we could combine all.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Chris. Is there any other last questions you have, Farrell, or anything else?
No, I think that was amazing, Chris. Like, what a story you have here. What an impact you've had on this community. I guess the only other question that I'd ask, Chris, is, you know, you're starting to see these communities pop up around the world, like even in America, places like Chicago has a freediving club, places that are far from the sea. What advice do you have for people that are maybe trying to do something similar like you, like cultivate a community in their area?
That's a great question. Of course, it all depends on their cultural. My advice will depend on their cultural customs and values, right? But respect the people who've been there before you, and even if there hasn't been people before you wanting to do this kind of program, respecting the people that live in these areas is a big thing. That helps you build trust, that helps you have good relationships. If you do everything through pureness without any agenda, you will see and find out everything will come, but there can't be an agenda. It has to be really pure.
Well, thank you so much for hosting us, Chris. This is look where we are. Look at this view.
Beautiful.
You're welcome.
Now I'm ready for our next adventure.
So we're going to do some spearfishing, and I think the tide looks like it's coming in.
I know.
We have coconuts.
Yes, we're electrolytes.
Superior hydration.
Yeah.
We're ready. All right. Thank you, Chris.